How did you hear about this show? When did you know you were going to do it?
So this past February, it was the beginning of February, I got reached out to by just a generic casting producer. That was like one of those production companies, not affiliated with the Beast team at all. I've been reached out to producers like this probably like 20 or 30 times since starting on TikTok a couple of years ago. And normally it's like dating shows, reality TV shows. I actually quit my job at Whole Foods after getting like 10,000 followers on TikTok because I thought I was getting casted in some new dating show.
What were you doing on TikTok?
Just talking about my prison experience, being in prison, and just telling all those stories from my perspective. And I didn't realize that COVID had exploded this whole world of prison TikTokers and prison YouTubers, where people are getting all these followers talking about their prison experience.
Do you think people are lying about those prison experiences? Like if they're getting all these views and money from telling the craziest stories, how often do you think they're just making them up?
Yeah, who would know, right?
I think so I'll tell you from my experience. So I'll have guests on my show where you'll hear that exact story being told by another guest, but just in a different way. And it's always the ones that really listen to the show. Like they'll come in the studio and they're like, big fan of the show. I listen to all your episodes. And then you kind of know that they took that story from another person on the show. So if that happens, then I think it's pretty safe to say that that probably happens in a general space, watching other people's TikToks talking about prison. But where I think I came into this prison TikTok world and prison YouTube world was I gained a following talking about it in a different way. Like I literally came out and said I paid for protection in federal prison. No one was doing that before, especially from my point of view.
What do you mean by that?
So I went to prison when I was 21, and I went to federal prison for 3 years. I got a 3-year sentence, and I literally paid someone to protect me while I was at the federal prison because these guys tried to extort me. Everyone thought I was a offender. They call them because of the way I looked. I was a white, nerdy kid, looked like Harry Potter. They actually called me McLovin in prison, so I got the McLovin tattoo.
No.
And then I have a portrait of him on my leg. They actually were trying to get him as a guard in the Beast video, but it didn't work out as like a cameo. But they called me McLovin in prison. And just like in the MrBeast video, my personality type is just able to adapt and kind of like be funny and be kind of calm in that. Like I'm shy, but I'm not shy at the same time. So I was able to just befriend people, and I guess the way I looked and people thought I was like funny, and it just naturally clicked. I was like their little brother. The guards would call me Squints from The Sandlot. So I was just everyone's little brother, and they looked after me.
What was your most viral prison story you talked about on TikTok?
So there was 3 major ones. That one I just told you. That was the one that really kind of like exploded the platform, where like World Star, No Jumper, all of those sites took it and ran with it. The other one was in the chow hall, my first day at the prison chow hall. I went to sit down. I got my tray of food, sat down at the table, and everyone at the table stops eating. I'm not really paying attention to it. I had just got out of the detention center where the food was horrible. And I'm at this new facility, Fort Dix, a low security prison, where there was like a buffet line and pudding and jello and all this great food, a salad bar. And I sit down at the white guy table. I just figured I had to be with my own race, like what you would see in prison movies. And I sit down there, everyone stops eating. And one of the white guys, big, bald, kind of jack dude, tattoos, kind of slams his hand on the table and is like, "Hey, you." And he says that a couple times, and I'm looking at him at that point, and I'm like, "Are you talking to me?" Like, I don't know. I just got here. No one knows me. And I'm like looking behind me and whatnot. And he explains to me that I'm not allowed to sit there. It's for it's a good paperwork table. You have to have good paperwork. And I'm like, "What's paperwork?" And he explains that paperwork shows that you're not a offender, you're not a rat, you didn't snitch on anyone, and until you get your paperwork, you're not allowed to sit at that table. And I was explaining to him that I'm there for fraud, and he looks at me, he's like, "Yeah, that's what they all say." And I'm like, "What do you mean, that's what they all say?" And he points to this table behind me and he says, "You belong over there at this table." And I look around, and it's a bunch of old white guys with the same type of glasses I had on that are staring at me like fresh meat. And that was a offender table. So that was like my first experience realizing what I was going to be labeled at in a federal prison. Eventually I got my paperwork and everything got sorted out. But that was like the reality of it. most people that are there in federal prison for fraud are not 21 years old. They're like in their 30s or their 40s. I was definitely on the younger side, and the guys that are offenders will say that they're there for fraud as a cover story.
So what is like the main difference in prison life between someone that's an SO and someone that's there for something else? Like what is their existence in prison look like?
So I was at the highest security prison I was at is a low, so I can only speak on that. And then I went to a camp after where there's no offenders. But at a low, basically, if you're a offender, you're not allowed to be in your room. They're 12-man bunks. You after wake up, you can't stay in your room throughout the day. You have to go wherever. Offenders would hang out in the library, or you would see them actually playing Dungeons and Dragons with like fake wands out on the yard.
So they all hang out together.
They all hang out together. Younger, older ones, they're the ones that have to clean your room. If there's a offender in your room, they're cleaning your room for no pay. They can't sit in the TV room. They don't have a chair to sit in. They have to like go to the chow hall and sit at certain tables. These are all inmate rules. These aren't prison rules like that the staff create. But at Fort Dix, a low security prison, it's a heavily offender compound because that's the only place these guys can go. At the higher security prisons, they'll get physically hurt. But the prison does frown upon that.
So how did you get the call from MrBeast?
So in February, that casting agent slid into all my DMs on every platform. And in my mind, I'm like, this here goes another one. Like, I'm not going to even respond. And they don't use the term MrBeast. They just said we're casting prison content creators. And I saw that, and then a bunch of other prison content creators, because we're all friends, just like I'm sure you guys are friends with other people in your space, are all like in group texting, hey, did you just get this offer? Did you just get this? Like this casting agent reach out, all of these things. And so I ended up taking the call. I'm not sure why I did it, but I did it at the time. It was just like a gut thing. And what I liked about this casting producer is they were ready to do the call right away. Normally with the casting producers, they'll schedule something for 2 or 3 days later. It's like an hour. It's like a whole big thing. Mm-hmm. I was free at the moment. I hopped on the call and I did a half-hour talk. And there was no like childhood stuff. It was all just tell me everything about prison. And I think what won her over was I had built an actual prison cell in my studio where we do skits. Like funny reenactments and stuff. So I showed her I had the real prison toilet. I had everything. They asked about my tattoos. We just had this whole conversation. I sent that in, and I had to sign an NDA at the time. And that's when I learned it was about MrBeast. They don't tell you it's prison related. They don't tell you how many people. They don't tell you how many days. And they don't tell you about the money. It was just, it's a MrBeast video.
So then when did you find out what it was that you were doing?
3 weeks later, that same casting agent follows up and says, hey, you made it to the next round. Can you meet with someone on the Beast team? I get on a call with now her and the lead casting agent of the Beast team. The questions on that call were more like, what would you do with the money? What would you do if you lost? What would you do if you stayed for 100 days? This is when I learned it was a 100-day video. And I said, all right, let me get back to you tomorrow, because they said I had 24 hours to give them a yes. And that wouldn't even guarantee me a spot. And so I text the casting agent right away and I said, I'm in. And she said, are you sure? Like, you could still take some time? And I said, no, like, everything works out. I could do this. A few days later, I'm on the call with the psychologist. I had to do like a 500 questionnaire before, and then an hour call with the psychologist, just getting a vibe, feeling, everything like that.
That seems like very, very intense vetting. You went through like, I don't even know how many calls you mentioned and like interviews and this and that. And then the psych evaluation, what were they probing for?
So I think this one was super strict and intense because of the felon part. So they, from their perspective, they needed to cast the perfect criminal in a way. Like they needed to cast someone that wasn't going to be too, like there wasn't going to be too much negative feedback, but was also a criminal. Someone that wasn't going to reoffend again or had a high potential to reoffend. So a lot of the psychological questions are like your current mind state, your family, business. They do a whole social media deep dive to see what your social media is like. That goes through that whole round. And then there was a lot of like confined spaces questions, like mental decision-making questions, like standard stuff you would see on a psych eval. But they were definitely, I think this was more extreme than anything because of the felon aspect. I mean, they needed to have someone with the felony that is going to, I mean, when they're casting, they're keeping in mind, can this person make it the whole 100 days? Because if you show up there, think about how much money's on the line, from the crew to the set to the prize winnings. And in our competition, if one person left, it's over.
Would they have still posted it?
I think that from what I've heard from the Beast team, like it has to be a certain amount of days. Like they have to have a workable video. I think if I left anywhere before like day 50, I don't think they would have had enough for a video.
Makes me wonder, because they're doing so many challenges, how many of them they just don't end up posting because someone walks out.
Yeah,
Like, great
I've heard
videos.
rumors like
Yeah.
of a couple that didn't get posted. I don't know the details of that, but I'm sure it happens, and you just don't see the light of day of them ever. I mean, the casting, there's a lot of pressure on the casting. You're just taking
Yeah.
two random strangers, putting them in an environment like this, especially this when you have a cop and a criminal. And that was the other thing. Like a lot of the prison community is like anti-cop or very outspoken. Like 90% of the prison violence is caused by guards. Creating this environment, creating these prison politics, all of these rules that the inmates make. The inmates run the prison, and the guards let it happen.